Hi there! Welcome to Pallet University. Today we are picking up, after well over a year, our series in which I give every Pokemon a scientific name, a genus, and a species. If you've not seen any of the previous videos that I'm talking about, the playlist with all of them will be down in the description, the first link there. And before I get into the actual content, the giving of names for things, I need to lay down a couple ground rules for some of these names. First is that these names are given primarily, mostly just by custom, with scientific names in either Greek or Latin, neither of which I'm all that familiar with personally. I know a lot of words, but I do not know the grammar and how to connect them properly to make them make sense. So if you do, please do not roast me. And secondly, when I give a Pokemon a name, it applies to everything in its evolutionary line. So for example, the first one that we're going to talk about today is Corsola. So that applies to both Johtonian Corsola, Galarian Corsola, and Cursola. The name applies to all three. And with that, like I said, let's just get started with Corsola. So what I decided to do previously in this series with different regional variants, because we've already worked our way through Generation 1. Generation 1 has many regional variants from Alola, and then some new ones from Galar as well, which I'll make sort of a revision video about sooner or later. But I made them subspecies, so they are the same genus and species, but they are different subspecies. So I will do the same with Galarian and Johtonian Corsola as well. So the genus and species for Corsola, and Cursola is Scleranthos spanios. And for Galarian Corsola and Cursola, they have the subspecies tacked on at the end of Terrestris because they are found on land. And Johtonian Corsola has the subspecies at the end of Marinus, obviously because it's found in the water. So what that actually very roughly translates to is rare hard coral of the land in the case of the Galarian ones, and of the sea in the case of Johtonian Corsola. Next up we have Octillery, who has the scientific name Pyrolonchus hydrus, which translates, again, very roughly. I'm not going to say that, but just know that every scientific name that I give is a very rough translation, but it translates roughly to water fire lance, and that is a reference to basically the first thought, what anthropologists think is the name of the weapon that first used gunpowder. Basically, the first cannon was, in China. That was, again, another very loose translation from, not ancient, but older Chinese to be called a fire lance. After that, we've got Delibird with the scientific name Cryoavis doris, which means cold gift bird. It's a nice type, it's a bird, it gives gifts. Next in line, we have Mantine with the scientific name Marinatus giganteus, which means giant sea eagle. So even though Mantine is almost definitely based off of a manta ray, there are different kinds of rays that are several of which are called eagle rays. After Mantine, we have Skarmory, whose scientific name is Panopliavis, which just means armored bird twice. That's literally Skarmory's whole shtick, and I could not think of a better possible name. After that, we've got Houndoom, whose scientific name is Canomalum cerberus. Weirdly, Cerberus as a genus is already taken. So and that's something I'll need to fix because I made that mistake a couple times. So I didn't want to give a Pokemon a scientific name that already exists. And weirdly, you'd think with it being Cerberus, the mythical Greek three-headed dog, that the genus name Cerberus would be given to some dog. But actually, no, it's given to a genus of snakes. I don't know. But anyway, so I wanted to make that Houndoom's genus, but instead I made it the specific name. So that ends up working out to roughly Evil Cerberus Dog. After that, we have one of my personal favorite Pokemon, Donphan, whose scientific name is Condylephantus rhodus, which literally means thick wheel elephant. I mean, look at it. After this would normally come Porygon 2. However, because Porygon 2 is an evolution of something that was in Generation 1, I might have already talked about it. However, with Pokemon that are not really biotic, I decided to skip them. So for example, like Porygon, Voltorb, Magnemite, I just sort of pushed them into, the future, so that future Gavin can worry about how to name abiotic things. And I'm going to continue doing that as well, because I've yet to figure out how to properly name them. It's like we do give scientific names to rocks, but it's like it's not like we give them a genus and a species, and with them being abiotic life forms, at least abiotic in the way that we normally think of life in the real world, do I give them a genus and species name? Or do I come up with a different naming system? Let me know down below. Anyway, moving past that, next comes Stantler, whose scientific name is Cervoculus somnus, which means sleepy deer eye, or some derivative of the three words sleep, deer, and eye, because of, Stantler's hypnotic antlers, looking sort of like eyes, and it's a deer. After that comes Smeargle, whose scientific name is Pictus canis, which literally means painting dog, or painted dog. And it's weird because there's actually a kind of dog called painted dogs. They're native to Africa. If you've seen, the wild dogs have the sort of relatively big ears that have quite short fur, but then kind of bushier white tails, where their skin or very short fur is kind of mottled with like a black and a brown, a sort of an orangish color. Those are painted dogs. So painted dogs are a real thing. So I just decided to sort of flip that and make it painting dog. After that comes probably my favorite name that I got to give to something, at least in this video, which is for Miltank. And at first I was actually kind of on the fence about whether I wanted to give Miltank its own name or whether I wanted to include it with Tauros. And because of the fact that there's not really any real in-game evidence for them being really related, I decided not to. But let me know your thoughts on that as well. Anyway, Miltank's scientific name is Rolactus bovis, or rolling milk cow. And obviously this is a reference to Whitney's Miltank destroying everybody back in Generation 2, and with it being a cow, and it being the first Pokemon, not the only Pokemon, there are a couple other Pokemon that now learn Milk Drink, but the first Pokemon to learn Milk Drink. And then we get into the Legendaries and Pseudo-Legendaries. So what I did for the Legendaries, at least the Legendary Trio of Generation 1, was I made them the same genus. I made them separate species, but they were in the same genus. And I'm gonna be doing the same for the Legendary Beasts, Entei, Suicune, and Raikou, in this one as well. And, I tried to come up with something kind of fancy, but realistically, I kind of couldn't. With coming up with a genus that fit all three of them, I kind of had to keep it simple. And then just sort of change the species, the specific part of the name, to fit each one accordingly. So we'll start with Raikou. Raikou has a scientific name Belua, which means beast, and the specific name Fulgur, which means lightning. Again, I tried to be a little more creative, but what can you do? Entei has the scientific name Belua ignis, which means fire beast. And lastly, for the legendary beast, we have Suicune, whose scientific name is Belua ventus. And if you thought that I was going to make Suicune's scientific name Water Beast, you are wrong. It actually means Wind Beast, which I think is way more accurate to Suicune itself than calling it a Water Beast. Getting into the home stretch, we have Tyranitar, whose scientific name is Monphagus Colossus, which means Giant Mountain Eater. That's a considerable part of at least Larvitar's lore, is that it eats and eats and eats mountains, basically, before it pupates into Pupitar. After that, we have Lugia, whose scientific name is Custos Oceanus, which means Sea Guardian, or Ocean Guardian, more properly. Again, literally all of its lore points to that, so there it is. Second to last, we have Ho-Oh, whose scientific name is Vitribus Arcus, which means Rainbow Life Giver, which is a reference, again, to its lore of giving life to the legendary beasts. And last but not least, we have Celebi, whose scientific name is Tempestitorus Nemus, which means Forest Time Traveler. Again, lore. And that's going to wrap up the Pokemon that we're covering in this video. So it has been, like I said, well over a year since I've done this series, and now that my viewer base is considerably larger than it was back then, please let me know your thoughts on this sort of format. Things you want to see changed, things that you want to see done differently, things that you liked are just as important as things that you want to see changed. All of that helps me a ton with this series going forward. Make sure to follow me on Twitter as well at Pallet_U to keep up on all things Pokemon science. As well as if you feel like supporting us in this way, we do have a Patreon, the link to which will be down in the description as well. And a big shout out and thank you to our supporter over on Patreon, Patty. Thank you. I don't know why I'm talking with my hands a lot in this video, it seems like. Anyway, I want to thank you, lastly, for watching this video to begin with, and as always, there's a time and place for everything.